Creating heat maps. This is the second video in our series on navigating LiveDC and is focused around creating and managing heat maps. The first video in this series deals with creating and managing data series, which is an essential prerequisite for heat map creation. Heat maps are used to visually display the information that is collected by LiveDC. This is generally applied to a floor plan of a physical location like a data center, but can be applied to other types of backdrops as well. In this video, we'll be using a data center floor plan. Here you'll see a flowchart of the order for creating and adding the components to LiveDC to build heat maps. As you can see, the data series is an essential first step in this process. Once we've added our map, we'll be creating influences from the data series and adding them to our recently uploaded map. To create our map, we're going to utilize an existing map of our data room, but we need to make the background of the map transparent so that our influences will show through. To do this, I'll be utilizing the GIMP image editing program. Open your floor plan in GIMP, select Layer, and select Transparency. Then arrow over to Color to Alpha. Make sure your background color is what's selected as the From color. Once the background is removed, we'll export the image and we're all set to import into LiveDC. To create a heat map using this image, we will click on Heat Maps in the left pane and click Create in the right pane towards the top of the screen. Within the heat map creation window, we're going to give it a name, add a few details about it to give a little more information, then specify height and width, which you will want to match with your floor plan image size. Now, we must add a legend to our heat map. Legends are used by the map to interpret and assign a color to a value that it receives from our data series, and will also show up at the bottom of the heat map to let you know what the value of each color is. If you do not already have legends created, we can add them by clicking the star. Since we don't have any created in this account yet, I'm going to create one. Within the legend creation window, we're going to give the legend a name and a few details to start with. Remember that this legend, from here on, will be able to be used by any future heat maps you create, so naming and description are important. After that, we're going to tell it how to format the values that it receives by giving it a number format template. There is one default template, which is Fahrenheit rounded, which is not going to work for us in this scenario since we're going to be using this heat map to show power utilization. So let's click the star to create a new one. Creating a number format template is a fairly simple process. We're going to give it a name, some details, and specifying the pattern. Once again, just like legends, this number format template will be used in any legend moving forward, so naming and description are important. When we create new number format templates, we'll almost always specify the Java decimal pattern as the type, and then all we must do is specify the pattern replacing the values that the data series is going to give us with the pound symbol. Since we want a number with one decimal point and an A after it to specify amps, we're going to add it just like that and click Create to finish the number format template creation. Back to the legend creation window, we're going to specify our new number format template using the drop-down and then move on to the values for the legend. We have a low value and a high value for the legend, and then the hints section, which is specifying how many graduations that you would like in the scale at the bottom. We're going to set our low end at 0 and our high end at 24 because this legend is going to apply to 30 amp circuits. We also want graduations in 1 amp intervals, so we'll specify 25 hints, which is 0 through 24. The last thing to do is upload a gradient file to use. You can use your own, otherwise you can download the ones that we use from www.livedcnow.com/downloads. Now it's time to add layers to our heat map. Every heat map needs at least 3 layers: a solid background, an influence layer, and the map with a transparent background. And they need to be in that order: solid background first, then any influence layers that you would like to add, and then your map. Let's create our first layer, the solid background. Click the star to create a layer, then give it a name and details. Select solid as the layer type and enter the color that you would like to use. The color that we use is 6Ds, which produces a very light gray color. We're also going to set our transparency to 0% and click Create. Alright, let's add our influence layer. We utilize basic influence type almost exclusively, so I'll set my basic influence type and then specify my legend here to apply it to all the influences that I add to this layer. And finally, it's time to add our floor plan image. I create a new layer of the type image and click the star to add a new image since I have not uploaded this image before. As with most other things we've been talking about here, this image file can be utilized in any heat map moving forward, so again, naming is important. Then click the Choose File button, browse for the image, click OK, and add some details to it. Now I can select that image from the drop-down and specify placement. Almost all the time, we use center, because when we created our heat map, if you remember, we based the size of the floor plan off the image that we are using, so it fits perfectly. That's it for the creation of the map itself. Now we need to assign influences to the influence layer so that the map can start telling us something about our environment. There are two ways to manage influences applied to a particular layer. The easiest way is to click on a particular heat map. Then in the lower pane, click on the layer that you want to manage influences for and click Manage Influences. The other way is to expand extras, then click Layers, select the layer that you want to, and click Manage Influences there. Once I am at the influences list, I can click Create to start adding influences to my layer. You must add one influence for every data series that you want to display data for on this map. Within the influence creation page, we are going to specify a data series to use for this influence and then specify a template. Templates are basically the sizes and shapes for the influence to indicate what portion of the heat map it will cover. These can vary greatly depending on what information the data series has. For instance, air temperature versus power utilization, and also based on your floor plan size. For air temperature sensors or humidity sensors in areas where there is no containment, we generally use circles with a 4 to 6 foot radius around the sensor. And generally they have a 25 to 50% overlap with nearby sensors. For air temperature or humidity inside ductwork or for power utilization, we generally use squares that properly fit inside the contained area on the floor plan. Since I don't have any templates here yet, I'm going to create one. We're going to give the influence template a name and details, and then we'll have to create a shape for the template. Click on the star to create a shape, and we'll specify the specific information for the shape. Don't worry, this is editable later if you would like to adjust the size of the shape. The rotation degrees doesn't really matter for the circle shape, but it does indicate what angle you would like the square shapes to be at. Also, the colors are only used when creating or editing the shape so that it's not invisible. They don't play any role in how the shapes appear on the heat map. Back at the influence template creation window, we're going to select the algorithm we'd like to use for this template. For influences that don't ever interact with other influences such as power and air temperature or humidity inside of ductwork, we will always select constant. For open air temperature or humidity, we'll be selecting one of the power options. The power in these options denotes that these options are varying degrees of how powerful each influence will be when they collide. For instance, a power 2 will have a very soft intersections that will give you a gradual change across your map, and a power 9 will have a very rigid intersection that appears a solid line between the two. We generally select power 2, but sometimes we'll do a power 3 if we have a very dense sensor deployment. Since we're building a power influence, we'll select constant. Now back at the influence creation window, we're going to give the influence position on the heat map. There are two ways to get your influences at the right place. One option is to find the exact pixel location on your floor plan and enter it here in X and Y coordinates. The other is to place all of your influences on your map at position 1, 1, and then use the edit functionality on the heat map itself to reposition them, which I'll show you in a second. There is a third option, and that is use XY coordinates to get the influence close to the location that you would like it to be, and then use the edit functionality to finish getting exactly right. This last option is the most common and preferable for our engineers. The last thing to add on the influence creation is the link type. This is basically indicating where LiveDC is going to take you when you click on this particular influence on the heat map. Do you want it to take you to see the data series that is reporting the data for this influence? Or would you like it to take you to see a hardware view of the rack that this influence is attached to? Once we've added that, we can hit Create to complete the influence creation. At this point, your heat map is created, your influences are placed on the heat map, and they should be showing information on your map. The last thing we're going to do is make sure that we have all of our influences in the exact right location on the map. Let's open up Heatmaps and click on the heat map we created. Then in the lower pane, click Generate. Once our heat map is showing, click the Edit button in the upper left corner and click the influence that you'd like to move. You'll see a menu pop up with an option to reposition the particular influence that you clicked on. If you click that link, a menu will show up giving you some options to move it. You can again use the coordinates if you like. Also, you can use the arrows to position the influence. But the easiest option is just to locate where you'd like to put it and left-click your mouse in that location. You'll see a white crosshair show up indicating where you clicked. At that point, just finish the move by clicking Move in the Move dialog box. Once you're finished moving your influence, click Edit again to turn off editing. We've now created our heat map, uploaded our floor plan, created and added influences to it, and verified that the information is showing up for these influences. You're all set to start monitoring the sensors on your map. As always, our engineers at Encompass are here to help you in any way. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to help.